And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, March 5th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. My name is Doug Hagmann. Absent from the studio today is Joe Hagmann. He will be rejoining us back tomorrow. Just want to welcome everyone to a very special show tonight. Again, Doug Hagmann flying solo for the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, taking you through a maze of news, information, and providing you the analysis of the news that you need to know in these perilous times. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. We do have a chat room feature that is up and available. If you do go onto the link provided via the live link, the chat room is below. You can sign on and, of course, join the conversation. Now, I just want to let everyone know I do not monitor the chat room. Normally, I don't. I mean, normally, if Joe is here, I sometimes kind of sort of do, although it's infrequent. So I don't monitor the chat room. So what I will do, however, is look at the chat log thereafter after the show. And the reason I mention this is because I've gotten a couple of messages from people saying, hey, it's really rude to ignore you or ignore me and such. Well, you're talking to yourself because I just don't look at this. Okay, just to let you know, setting the ground rules here. I will open the phone lines during the third hour, the last hour of the show, after we cover some very important information. One thing I'd like to ask, the only time I do normally monitor the chat feature is when there are audio situations, or we think there are audio situations. Folks in the chat room that are listening to this, can you hear me okay? Does the sound all right? And I asked the question. I'll look for a response from people, and just to be sure that we're okay. 5 by 5. See, that's what I like to hear. No Joe tonight. Sorry about that, folks. He will be coming back. Like I said, he'll be joining us tomorrow. He's on a super secret assignment, and that's all I'll say. Sometimes the truth is even less exciting than the fiction. And Marianne, I just want to say this. I just got your email. I was out of the office pretty much all day, so I didn't check my email, and I want to apologize for not calling you back or not getting back in touch with you that way. And, of course, I think you probably understand why. Now, that said, folks, there's a lot of news that's out there, and a lot of news. But what's important? What are we seeing that's extremely important that we should be paying attention to? And, sometimes we have to look at the news, and we ask for spiritual discernment. I think everyone should ask for spiritual discernment of what's important. And who's important? Oh, but speaking of who, by the way, we're going to have L.A. Marzulli on tomorrow night. I want to remind everyone, tomorrow night our very special guest will be L.A. Marzulli. And I will be updating the website here at some point in the next several hours, maybe the next 12 hours. The reason I say that is I did receive information from my DHS contact today, and I do want to publish that. New information about a series of events. And that's going to be, there will be I'll be mentioning this during the show, too, as to what the topic is. I'm not sure if you saw this or not, ladies and gentlemen, but let me go right to this as the highlight of everything. Let me just grab it here. Okay. Yesterday, the Dow closed at an extremely high industrial average. set a record. $14,164.50. $14,164.50. The Dow Jones International Average or Industrial Average was closed. The Dow closed at that number, and that was the highest since 2008, since the record-setting number at 2008. And I think it was Zero Hedge. They did a comparison for when the Dow set that record in 2008, or when it was at that level in 2008, and of course setting a new record today. Certain things, certain indicators, and these are things that we should be looking at, that every one of us should be looking at, because this is going to affect every one of us. What's coming down the pike is going to affect every one of us. And I'll tell you why first, and then I'll get into the indicators. Remember, and you may not, folks, but on February 20th, 2003, 10 years ago, roughly, a deadly fire caused by the use of pyrotechnics resulted in the deaths of, I believe it was 100 people, injuring 230 more at the Station nightclub in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Now, according to official investigative results, it took less than 6 minutes for that nightclub to be fully engulfed in flames and completely destroyed, burnt to the ground. In just over 5 minutes, the lives of many people were changed forever. And no one inside that club saw it coming until it was too late. No one. Perhaps a few. I shouldn't say no one altogether. Perhaps a few. But precious few. At present, our country, the United States of America, and for that matter, the entire globe, is comparable to that nightclub and the citizens of the U.S. to its patrons. As elected officials, past and present, the Federal Reserve and the Wall Street elite, they are all individuals who lit the fuse on those pyrotechnics inside this country. They are the arsons who are intentionally burning our country to the ground inside this country, using the analogy of that nightclub. Others, and there are others, who are intentionally blocking some of the exits. And I have to say, there was one person during that fire that actually blocked an exit, according to official reports. So wouldn't let people out because the exit was for the band only. Apparently he didn't get the memo that the club was on fire. I've noticed something different. I've noticed something on the internet where there's this tendency of people to call what I'm talking about doom porn. Have you seen that term? I find that extremely offensive. I find that interesting as well. But doom porn. Think about that. It's almost as if people are saying, "Well, you get off on, or you enjoy talking about this doom and gloom stuff," and it never happens. All the things you talk about, it's a fantasy. Is it really? Well, look, with the Dow hitting a new record high, I would undoubtedly be accused right now of talking about doom porn, or if I wrote about it, authoring doom porn, especially by those who follow the Keynesian model of economics. When I talk about for example, for the stock market and for the Dow Jones, that among other factors, that the Keynesian model of economics brought us to this very point in our economic history, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And it's not going to be boring. It's going to be actually, hopefully, instructive. But look around you, folks. People are still buying big-ticket items. They're taking vacations. They're living a relatively normal life, and they're seemingly unscathed by what's currently taking place, by what's taking place in the stock market. But they are clueless. Many are clueless. They're like the club patrons. Many are like the club patrons in that club fire, thinking perhaps that the flames that ran up the walls and over the ceilings, just for that early time period, just for that few critical seconds, that those flames the flames going up the wall and over the ceiling, that was part of the act. A lot of people thought that, according to reports. They thought, well, never thinking for one moment that they could be in a position of danger. And isn't that, in a way, that normalcy bias, isn't that the way that people have a tendency to be? You go into a lot of, and I hear this when I talk to investigators who investigate different serious situations. Imagine going into a mall and hearing shots. What do you think? What's your first thought when you hear a bang inside a mall? Something fell or a balloon popped. You never think that there's an active shooting scenario going on. Maybe now you might, but 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't. Now that your eyes are open a little bit, especially the listeners to this program. But you just don't comprehend that. You don't comprehend the serious nature of that. And if you think about that, that's where a lot of people are today. They hear that shot in the mall thinking it's just something that fell or a balloon popping or just something weird until they hear the screams of the people. And then they know something is wrong. Same thing with the nightclub fire. A lot of people in this country are going to be just like those in the nightclub. 100 dead, 230 wounded, injured. And I believe there was 100 that escaped unscathed. Folks, that's kind of a dynamic, in my view, of where we're at right now in this country. We are at that point where that fuse for those pyrotechnics economically has been lit, and the flames are now showing. And wherever you are in that nightclub now being the United States of America, you need to find an exit. You need to find an exit and get out of the way. Now, are you going to fight the fire? Do you have the equipment to fight the fire? Well, probably not. But you need to get out of the way of the immediate conflagration. This is what and I'll tell you what that conflagration is. Zero Hedge said it. Zero Hedge had showed you the conflagration. The Dow Jones average hitting a new high, making everyone think that the flames that are rushing up the side of the wall and across the ceiling, that's normal. But think about this. Gas prices, when the first $14,164.50 mark was hit in 2008, what were they then? $2.75 a gallon. What are they now? $1 more, roughly, $3.75 a gallon. The GDP growth back then was, depending on who you ask, 2.5%. What is it now? 1.6%. I question those figures, both of them. The first seems a little high, and the second seems a little high as well. American unemployed in the labor force. Back in 2008, it was 6.7 million. Today, it's roughly double that at 13.2, or actually 13.4 million. So almost exactly double. Our unemployment has doubled in 5 years, the number of our unemployed. The number of people on food stamps back then in 2008 was 26.9, we'll say 27 million. Where is it today? 47 million, nearly 48 million. The size of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet was an eighth, well, we'll say a ninth of $1 trillion, 0.9 trillion. And if you can just imagine what $1 trillion is, I don't think people understand what $1 trillion is. I have a hard time comprehending what $1 trillion is. Let's just say it's a boatload of money. Well, it's now 3.01 trillion off balance sheet. The debt, our debt as the percentage of the gross domestic product back then was 38%. Now it's 74.2%. Now, that's a very significant factor. The debt as a percentage of our gross domestic product, it was bad at roughly 38%. It's even worse at 74.2%. Basically debt to, I don't want to say earnings, but debt to our earnings and everything else, okay, for lack of a better way to explain it. Even people feel this because the consumer confidence back then, people were confident in a recovering economy. Why? I'm not exactly sure then. 99.5%. Again, I question that, but right now it's about 70%. And that's important because the drive that the people have. This is what's taking place right now is taking the wind out of people's sails, making people feel helpless, making people feel, those that are paying attention, making people feel helpless, making people feel like helpless and hopeless, I suppose. The average volume New York Stock Exchange per day was 1.3 billion shares. Right now it's 545 million shares. Look, what's taking place right now are high-frequency trades in the market. In other words, you don't have people in the pits and, where the people making trades, the people, the yellers in the pits, basically. What you've got is an artificial, just an artificial computer-to-computer type of arrangement. They trade in milliseconds. The computers trade with each other in milliseconds. There's no human contact. There's really few in the pit trading. It's all computer. So the way the system is designed, by the way, and this is important. I've not seen this addressed anywhere. You've got computers trading with computers for trades of stock. But the way the system is designed is this: if there is at least a bit of a blip, of an anomaly, that grinds those computers to a screeching halt, and everything stops. Because, see, if you're a trader, chances are you're trading with an algorithm, and you're employing that, and there's like a stop-loss feature in that. But ask yourself this, and I think everyone should be aware of this. People say, well, you know what? I'm in the stock market right now. That's what people say. Or some people might say that. I'm in the stock market right now. Sure, I've got a 401k. And the 401k is based on stocks. I'm going to get out when things get bad. See, what I'll do is I'll wait until things get really bad, and then I'll sell. Or I see them getting bad, and then they'll sell. Or I'll wait until the very last moment, until the flames are really close, and then I can sell. But here's the thing. There's got to be somebody on the other end to buy. The only people that are really the only people, and the only real trades that are going on are people at the highest level of this Ponzi scheme that know what's going on. Those are the only people. Unless you're one of those, you're going to go to sell your position, and I'll tell you what, you're not going to have anybody to buy. What are you going to do then? You're going to watch your 401k. You're going to watch whatever you have as a retirement plan become dust, evaporate. The numbers just go away. And it's the very architects of this fire that are in office today and have been in office before. And it's not limited to the Progressive Party, formerly known as the Democrats, or the Republican Party. It's both. It's both, and it's each and every one of those people. It's the Fed. It's Ben Bernanke. It's the Treasury Secretary, both present and former, Timothy Geithner. And before that, it's the Fed chairmen, the other Fed chairman, Paul Volcker, others. They are the arsonists. They are the architects of our demise. And we have to understand that. Now, we're going to be getting into that. I'll be getting into that a little bit more here shortly. But just understand this. The country today is just like that station nightclub in Rhode Island. 5.5 seconds. It went from just a normal night for everyone inside there to death, destruction, mayhem, fully engulfed. People's lives were changed forever, and very few, if any, inside that club saw it was coming until it was too late. That's where we are today in this country. And I got to tell you, a lot of the people that were killed were killed at the exits. They were killed trying to get out of the building. They were trampled. They were crushed. They were stuck, because you can't have 5 people going through a doorway at the same time, and then have another 5 trying to climb over those 5, and have another 2 trying to climb over those people. And so, too, will it be in the United States. Some believe that what we are witnessing with regard to our economy and the health of our dollar is under control, that what we're witnessing is an orchestrated type of high with regard to the Dow, and everything is orchestrated. It's all under control, and believe me, in many respects they are correct, 100% correct. The difference, however, is that the people in charge of the pyrotechnics of our economy and our nation are psychopathic arsonists. They are working for people, or our people, who want to bring in a single one world governance that has a one world economic system. And if you don't believe me, then explain to me how those numbers that I talked about make sense. If you're listening to this broadcast, or if you have maybe an associate who says, it's doom porn, it's all a bunch of hooey. Oh, we've heard this before. When's the economy going to collapse? Oh, we heard that back in the Bush days. Oh, we've heard it. We've always heard this. If you are like that, or if you know someone like that, ask them this question: when have we seen this situation in history before, where we've had this artificial high of the Dow, where all the trades are computerized? The volume is computerized. It's all just a bunch of computers talking to each other, and there's no real human-to-human contact. It's called dead churning, if you will, in the system. And then the precious metals, for example, silver and gold, look at the prices compared to the other factors. Anyone who understands any basic points of economy, when your dollar, your system of your monetary system is devalued, and our dollar since 1913 has been devalued about 97% or greater. That's right. Think about that, 97%. It's a fiat currency. So, but when you have that and you've got precious metals, the value or the cost or the price going down, how does that make sense? And you've got a high Dow. How does that make sense? In what world is what we're seeing make sense? It is an obvious sign. It is an obvious sign that the game is rigged. There's external influence. There's no other explanation. No economist can give you a logical, reasonable explanation on what's taking place unless they admit the game is rigged, number one, or number two, they just lie to you. And because they don't believe you've got the mental capacity to understand what they are doing or what they see happening. Why? Because I've got mine. That's their thought. I've got mine, or I'm getting mine. When this whole thing comes down, I'm going to make sure I'm going to protect my interest. I'm getting mine, so why should I help you? Why should I tell you? So you got one of two things taking place. I mean, they're in on it. And they're lying to you. Well, I suppose, you know what, that's really about or they don't understand it. And I don't for 1 minute believe that they don't understand it, especially if you have an economist. But if you've got somebody, and that's the thing, people who are right now, and I've convinced not a lot, but I've convinced some people who in the recent past, have not believed that we're in trouble, to take a look at the factors I just talked about. Take a look at the reality. That's all you need to do. Take a good hard look at what we're seeing, and you'll understand that none of this makes any sense. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. Does it to you? Of course not. No, you folks understand what's taking place. So the accusations of doom porn, as far as I'm concerned, fall short and are impotent with respect to the facts. The facts prove where we're at. But a little more, too, because I find when I look at the news, I mean, how much can we talk, for example, about how many times can we talk about the DHS increasing their ammunition and their assets and the movements of the DHS? How many shows can we dedicate to that? Are you getting it yet? I mean, we could spend the whole show talking about it, but if you can't find that, if you can't stumble across that on the internet, wow. Or if you don't have any idea what's taking place, that we are going to become slaves, that there's going to be civil. In fact, I will get into this a little bit more, but I'm not going to talk about the same headlines and regurgitate the same headlines we see over and over again. But look, if people don't understand what's going on right now, wow, you're going to get stuck in the stampede out the doors of what is known as the United States. I'm not talking physically out the doors, but metaphorically. You've got to get out of the way. You've got to get out of the way of what's coming. And by getting out of the way, I'm saying don't be a victim because you don't believe your eyes. Okay? When you look at the Dow Jones and you look at everything else around you, it doesn't make sense. And you call your broker, and you say, "Look, I want to get my money out of the 401k. Well, in fact, I'm going to get out." And your broker says to you, "Who have you been listening to? What? Who have you been listening to?" Well, they're trying to stop you. They're blocking your exit. You've got to get out of the way of what's coming. And that I pray that everyone does do that. In fact, I'm going to take us back to a period of time when I first learned about the New World Order. And then, folks, you might think, well, geez, this is kind of like this is really crazy. It's crazy to think about this. But I think in order to understand the causes which lie in the past, which have, by the way, produced the effects that we are experiencing today, especially and particularly with respect to the economic and the very unsatisfactory state of the national and the international affairs, I think that we have to look at history. I think that history, we've got to study it because it does repeat itself. What's that saying? There's nothing new under the sun. History repeats itself because there has been just a perfect continuity of purpose in the struggle that we're witnessing, which has been going on since the beginning of time. And that struggle consists of, obviously, good and evil, two sides. The forces of good and evil to decide whether the rule of Almighty God shall prevail, and they will, or whether the world shall just literally go to hell, go to the devil. The entire issue, at least as I see it, is quite that simple. Both the forces for good and the forces for evil, based on my investigation, my research, have been split into different factions. And these factions, look, they're going to oppose each other in an effort to reach a common goal. And that kind of makes things complicated. When you start hearing things like these local and regional conflicts, boy, that kind of, when the factions within the, we'll say the good guys and the factions within the bad guys start opposing each other, that does make the study of what we're talking about, or the understanding of what we're talking about, a bit more complicated. The difference of opinion have been produced by the propaganda, which is used more often for spreading lies and half-truths than it is used as a medium for telling the plain, simple, unhyperbolic truth regarding any event or subject. I don't care if you're talking about 9/11 or whatever subject or event you're talking about. Now, these sometimes they're called the neoconservatives or warmongers or whatever. Look, they've used propaganda to divide human beings into opposing camps on a number of venues, political, social, economic, religious issues. So they can stir people up into such a state of emotionalism that they're going to fight and kill each other off. And isn't that to some extent what's happening today? That they're going to fight and kill each other off. People, that's what is desired, a desired effect. When we talk about religion as well, the human race is divided into two areas as far as religion is concerned, two broad areas. And it comes right down to this. You can argue doctrine all day long, but when you look at the world, you take a few steps back, there's people that believe in the existence of an almighty God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the other camp deny that existence of a supreme almighty God. So you've got the people who believe and the people who don't. It's just that simple. We can break it down further, but think about it. It's just that simple. The conception of God varies with different sects, by the way, different doctrines, different teachings, and something that we're not going to get into. But we can look back at the development of different subjects of different religions and discuss that. But the bottom line is, look at the broader picture. The comparative religions also give us an indication that most, if not all, religions, which have a belief in a supreme being or monotheistic religions, started out more or less with the worship of and love of Almighty God. Period. Respect for our elders and our parents was kind of a shall we say, well, it was part of it. It was part of the whole process of acknowledging an Almighty God. And you see how things like that go hand in hand? In offering prayers for deceased relatives and friends, and that kind of formed the basic principle when you go back to the core, based on everything I've looked at anyway. But the evil people, they actually were actually kind of thrust by their own motives and selfishness and greed and desire for power. They caused nearly all monotheistic religions, all actually religions, to deteriorate to the levels that they are today. And some have deteriorated as far as having priests sacrifice humans as their offerings to God. Even Christianity, which is some of the most recent religions, has deteriorated. And we have to admit that. It has. It's been split up into numerous factions or denominations. And it would certainly require a great deal of imagination to picture the vast majority who profess to be Christians today as really true soldiers or followers of Jesus Christ. Folks, would you agree with me on that? If you step back and look at it, it would definitely take quite a great deal of imagination to picture the vast majority of people who profess to be Christians today as true soldiers or followers of Jesus Christ, to the extent that they can put doctrinal differences aside. Generally speaking, Christianity has deteriorated to an extent with regard to the practice of good works. and I know that this is not, again, I don't want to get into doctrinal things, but this has become a matter of significance, especially when we study, for example, the struggling that's going on between the forces of good and evil. We do not need in any way, shape, or form internal struggles when we are looking at a huge evil coming upon us today. We need the unity. We need Christian unity. We need unity in the Christian fold. For the real definition of the word neighbor is a person who has proved himself your benefactor, a person upon whom you can rely, and a person who you are certain wouldn't do any harm under any circumstances. You know, the scriptures tell us that we must love our neighbor as ourselves for God's sake. The only way to make good neighbors is to perform good works ourselves, to be a good neighbor ourselves. So let's be good neighbors to our neighbors, both in the Christian community and in the real world, or I don't want to say that, I shouldn't have said it that way, both in the Christian community and in proximity to the people around you. Lack of a person's individual good works means lack of unity and lack of community uplifting. And we have just evolved so far down. You know, we leave a lot to social workers, and we rely, let's just leave everything to social workers. Isn't that feeding the beast, so to speak? Isn't that feeding the very system in which we abhor? The vast majority of professed Christians are not real soldiers of Christ. That's my belief. Now, I don't want to go far down this road, but I've seen, having talked to Steve Quayle, having talked to Greg Evenson and others, I think I can make that statement without really, and I'm not talking about people that listen to our program necessarily, but every card-bearing member of either the communist or Nazi parties, you know, they had to swear, give unlimited obedience to that leadership, whether it was communist or Nazi, to devote every waking hour to the furtherance of that particular cause and contribute part of his or her income toward the financing of the party's activities. Do we do that as Christians? We're right now, based on current numbers, I think Christians are divided in like 400 different denominations, which surprised me. Did that surprise you? It surprised me when I heard that. 400 denominations, communists and Nazis, were all solidly united under the banner of evil and anti-Christian. A continuation of this is what I would call, I shouldn't say continuation, a big part of this is what I would call the New World Order dreamed about and talked about by politicians. There's just this great similarity, I believe, in the beliefs of those of those who worship a God and the Almighty God. Well, you know, I'm just not going to go down this road any further. I think you folks understand what I'm trying to say. We all have to unite. We all have to be kind of each other's alarm bell, a good neighbor to one another. If you were a neighbor and you saw your neighbor's house on fire, you tell them, and you figured they were inside, you're going to pound on their door and tell them to get out. If it was 2, 3 in the morning, of course you are, if you're a good neighbor. And this is where we're at right now, to kind of bring it back to where we started. Let people know, to the best of your ability, that the arsonists have lit the fuse and the pyrotechnics and the flames are going up the walls and hitting the ceiling, the economic flames. It's that bad. This is where we are. It's that bad. And what's it going to look like? Are we going to have 5 seconds, or 5 minutes or 6 minutes to get out of the way? Or are we going to have, or is it going to be longer? Look, I don't have an answer to that question. All I can tell you is it's a fire caused by these arsonists, psychotic arsonists. Started long ago, as a matter of fact. But we got to get out of the way. We got to watch. And see, part of the getting out of the way is also preparing as well. So we also have to prepare and be good stewards in that too, and help others prepare, or tell others to prepare. And this is something that I definitely want to make sure people understand, that we do help others to the extent possible. But what we've done since 9/11, we've sacrificed our own liberty in the name of security, and see how far down this road are we going to go. After 9/11, I mean, this has been creeping up throughout the ages, but once 9/11 hit, 9/11 was the hinge moment when we decided to call enough. We said, this is enough. We're ready to succumb to or give up a lot of our freedoms for security, or for the illusion of security. But see, the old deception used for centuries by the elite. And when I say elite, I'm talking about the people in power. If you want to call them the Illuminati, that's I would call them that. I would call them the people that have this information, or at least the inner circle, whatever you want to call them. The goal of the operation is social engineering of the world's population to this moment in time, and even beyond. There is not one shred of doubt, after listening to various people over the last numerous programs about 9/11. There's not one shred of doubt that the event was orchestrated. Now, hear me clearly. Was orchestrated by a very small group of people that are really running this planet. All right. Think about this, by the way, and I'm going to take you back because, and all of this can be verified, but think about the fact that George Herbert Walker Bush had a joint bank account with Saddam Hussein during the first Gulf War. You going to find that anywhere, like on the internet or anything? I find that, in fact, when I heard that, I found that really hard to believe. But to the best of my knowledge, and as far as I could take it, did I see the bank account? Did I look at the bank book, so to speak? Of course not. But there are ways to verify or to attempt to authenticate this. Now, the goal of the operation, again, the goal of 9/11, and basically every terrorist operation forward, has been used to condition people, social engineering the world's population, our population in America, condition, control, and eventually enslave. But a big part of this, too, is the economy, is how they're going to hit our economy. They're going to hit our economy pretty hard. They're going to take down, in fact, they, meaning the Illuminati, the people in power, the power elite, they are burning down the club with us in it, not giving one whit about our safety, our salvation. And if I was talking to my wife right now, she'd say, do you really believe that? I could just hear her right now. Do you really believe that? Yes, I do. I believe that there are elements of our society that are psychopaths. And all you have to do is look at the banking system, the system of economy, how it's set up, to understand that it's a Ponzi scheme, and these people are playing us, and they're psychopaths. That's correct. But anyway, why did I bring up the George Bush Saddam thing? Well, things are not what they seem. If that could happen during the first Gulf War, during Desert Storm, that should tell you something. That there's this overlap and overlay between good and evil, between people, or I shouldn't even say between good and evil, but between elements. So everything that you're seeing is not what it appears to be. George W. Bush gave, $43 million to the Taliban leadership back 7 months before 9/11. I'm sorry, 5 months before 9/11. Think about that, $43 million American dollars to the Taliban leadership he gave on May 24th, 2001. Now, what makes this outrageous? More than 100 congressmen the day before had sent him a letter just telling him, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Others sent him a letter begging him to intervene on behalf of minority religions in Afghanistan who were being required to wear ID labels on their clothes to differentiate them from Muslims. So think about that. Is that not like the Jewish Tsar of World War II? Like Saddam Hussein, our CIA trained and helped bin Laden and others working today right now get into the terrorist business. It's just crazy. Look at where we came from. And I know this is, people are saying, well, we knew all this. Well, in a way, how much do you know? How deep does this rabbit hole go? You've got to ask questions about 9/11 that were asked with Judy Wood asked, where did the towers go? And when you look at the scenes, you look at the slides, the dustification of solid material, and you see it dissolve right in front of your eyes. You've got to know. You've got to know, man. I mean, if you're honest with yourself, the first thing you have to say is, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? I mean, is this true? And then if you say yes, then you've got to admit that something is definitely wrong here. I said all that to say this. What was started back in the in the 1600s, whatever, 1700s, as the Rothschild, or with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and stuff, is the Illuminati. It was carried through today. There are two families, really, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. There's really two families. And they're in the quest for world domination. Once again, you go back through history and you can find out where they stand, or I'm sorry, how things have played out. You can go back through and understand that America financed both sides of World War II. Then, in fact, you can find that the Illuminati, if you will, financed all sides of any conflict. Think about that. Imagine you, as a wealthy individual, financing both sides of a conflict. Look into the lineage, by the way. Well, you've heard of Aleister Crowley, folks. Look into the lineage of people like Winston Churchill, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton. Who's Bill Clinton's father? Real father, biological father. If I said it was Winthrop Rockefeller, would you be surprised? Or would you throw me in the loony bin? I don't know. Look at the lineage of Churchill, or even George Prescott Bush and James Earl Carter. Are their fathers, or do they have the lineage that would entitle them to certain power, a certain level of power within the, shall I say, the Illuminati? And why is this important? Why am I even talking about this? Well, because to understand the effects of what we're seeing today, and there are effects, we have to look at the causes. What are the causes? When you've got nothing but a birth structure, and you've got investigators looking at this birth structure, and you've got a pile of bodies at the exits, piles of bodies at the exits, there needs to be some questions asked. How did this happen? But when you see this on a large global scale, there need to be some questions asked. Not only how did this happen, but when did it start? Who did it? How long was this being planned? Why? Is a big part of this for revenge? Well, revenge, I don't know, justice perhaps. But no, so we don't do it again. So when the time comes, when we see the dollar collapse and our economy collapse and we've got nothing left, we are not going to allow ourselves to be subjugated in the same fashion just on a global scale. We're not going to have, why, when it all falls down and it all burns to cinder, why in the world would we ever say, well, let's take part in this global economic system because it sounds like a pretty doggone good idea. It sounds like, hey, the dollar didn't work, so let's take part in the global system. Does that sound like a good idea? We're just moving. Yeah, I was talking to an investigator friend of mine. It's like back in the 70s, the Ponzi schemes that were rife back then. People travel from the East Coast to the West Coast and taking people's money, and people would fall for the Ponzi schemes, and they'd move on. And once they got people caught up with them on the West Coast, they'd start traveling back east, going through the very same set of affairs. And see, isn't that what we're doing here a little bit? We're falling for the same things. If the entire system fell tomorrow and burned down in less than 6 minutes, and people were caught unawares, and people were caught, wow, what happened? And someone came up to them and said, look, let's do this all over again. No, you've got to understand what happened, how it happened, so it won't happen again. So you don't say, okay, we'll build the system back up in the image as it was. Of course not. That'd be ridiculous. Instead of having it limited in the United States, it would be global. But the plan of these elitists, the plan of these Illuminati people, the plan of the power brokers are to certainly put everything under one world currency, but establish the different trade zones, the 10 trade zones. Just think about that. The Amero, the North American Union, the Amero perhaps, that's not looking to, remember the discussion about that, and everyone laughed and says, that was all a joke. No Amero. All of those were commemorative coins. See, the Hegelian dialectic in this case with respect to the economy, they create the problem and they provide the solution. In this case, they provide the solution and then they create the problem, knowing what the solution is or knowing what the solution is going to be. This is exactly what they're doing in this case right now. This is exactly what these evildoers are doing right now. All right. The Russians, by the way, just to move into some different things before the top of the hour, the Russians are moving to conduct a very large nuclear drill. Folks, you don't think that there's consequences to be had for our actions in Benghazi and Syria, how we are handling things, and of course our display of weakness by the current administration? Well, the Russian forces conducted a huge exercise last month that tested the transport of both their tactical weapons inside and around Europe and strategic weapons in and around Europe. There were a lot of concerns inside the Pentagon and with the European Command because it was the biggest exercise in over 20 years. And not only that, actually during the exercise, they actually raised the alert status of the Russian nuclear forces. Now, I think we might have talked at the time about these movements. In fact, I believe Greg Evenson talked about this. The drills were part of just a whole bunch of other maneuvers. They took place between the 17th and 21st of February, by the way. But the national security community, because of the scale of the exercise and the number of weapons that were moved, they were concerned and still are concerned because when you've got this kind of exercise going on, you've got just a number of possibilities. But see, there's another worry. Russia, while the United States under Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, whatever his name is, and by the way, if you're listening to this broadcast, and if you think that I'm being facetious when I say that, I'm not, because I really don't know that man's legal name. And if you have the documents in your possession that can be authenticated to prove who this guy is in the White House, let me know. So until that time, until that you actually provide me with the physical documentation. I'm just going to say that, shall I say, it just makes me think of the guy, Prince, remember that musician, what was it, the man formerly known as Prey? Never mind. But look, Russia they're increasing their preparation of the nuclear forces. The new U.S. Nuclear complex is not. No, we're not. We're actually drafting down. Russia, China, they're drafting up. There's a lot of things going on too. North Korea, and this is something we have to watch because North Korea, they're acting up again. And a good friend of mine called me today earlier and heard a young lady talking on Alex+Jones on InfoWars or the Alex+Jones show, saying that made a statement something like since the I think it was since the end of the war, since America, or it made it sound like the war between North Korea and the United States was over. Okay, the good guys versus the bad guys in North Korea, that was over. Well, no, there was a ceasefire, but there was never an end of the war. So technically, we're still in a state of war with North Korea. But North Korea is starting to act up again. And folks, understand this: North Korea is a proxy of China. There's nothing North Korea will do or can do that will not have the approval from or the facilitation by China. Think about that. Just like what's going on in Syria, Iran, they're all proxies of Russia. So by proxy, we're at war with Russia. By proxy, we're at war with China. And if you think about this, it's kind of frightening how quickly, because of our lack of readiness, how quickly that we could be overtaken. You know, the movie Red Dawn, the new one, North Korea, doesn't seem so far-fetched now in a way, does it? But while we're cutting our troops and cutting our forces or cutting our assets, Russia, China, they're building up theirs. You think that's by accident? No, I don't think so. I don't believe so. One thing I saw today that I'm kind of interested in, I want to know exactly why. And in case you didn't hear this, the White House is closed to visitors beginning next week. Now, some say it's because of the sequester or because of the debt issue and what have you. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but so all tours are going to stop next week. I'm not sure what to make of this. Like I said, I think there is an argument to be made that the White House being closed for tours I think that an argument can be made that it's being used as a political ploy. Whether or not, however, that is the truth, the real truth, I don't know. All right, folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This 5th day of March, it is a Tuesday. I'm running solo. My name is Doug Hagmann. Usually with me is Joe Hagmann. He's unavailable tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be right back after these brief messages. Please stay with us. Oh, and by the way, we'll be taking your calls. I'll be taking your calls during the final hour. That's hour 3. For those interested, 661.
If you're stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilida Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world. Ladies and gentlemen, let me alert you to this. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, and once again, we're going to have content up there, some new content, including some information from my DHS contact and updated information about that. But look at the right hand column and find Grandland Firearms of British Columbia. Click on that link. If you are a hunter or if you're into camping, survivalist gear, whatever, click on that link. It's Grandland. It takes you to, by the way, GrandlandFirearms.com. That's GrandlandFirearms.com. Now, they're a sponsor of our show, and we really want to welcome them on board. You got to get your guns and ammo supplies soon. If you haven't already got them, get them. And yes, you can buy from Canada. Now you have to go through a licensed firearms dealer here in the States, and it's kind of dicey and iffy, and you've got to do it properly. But if you're up in Canada, pay them a visit there in Campbell River, beautiful Campbell River, British Columbia, the salmon capital of the world. But anyway, the website GrandlandFirearms.com, they've got just a tremendous list of inventory, their gun stock list. They've got a tremendous photograph gallery. If you're into the outdoors and the wild of Vancouver Island, it's a great place to. There's a book. Great place. There's a book called Tree by the River. Get yourself a copy of that, as well as, and by the way, that makes good reading too for the sportsmen. It's good gift for a sportsman in your family. Good gift for people who enjoy reading stories about hunting, cougar, or just hunting in general. It's a great gift. They also have some really neat clothes, branding stuff, like the T-shirt with a deer head on it and their cap. That's GrandlandFirearms.com. Carl and Lori Grandland, great people, salt-of-the-earth people. They've been in business 20 years. If you have any questions, give them a call. Their phone number's on their website, GrandlandFirearms.com. Give them a call. If you've got a question, any question whatsoever, guarantee you they'll be more than happy to take care of you. They'll answer for you. That's GrandlandFirearms.com.
Since President Obama took office, the country has seen the largest rise of people on food stamps ever.
Well, everybody uses them out here in D.C. because we all out here struggling.
An estimated 47 million people now depend on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program to put food on the table. That's 1 in 5 adults, and larger than the population of Spain.
A lot of people don't have the support that they have or have good jobs, or the baby fathers not around to support the kids. So they have to go out, it means they have to get public assistance to help to feed their children.
Here's what they call an EBT.
Since 2008, food stamp use has spiked over 50%, and so have instances of fraud and abuse. One example of food stamp fraud, selling your card for cash. And Washington, D.C. has one of the highest percentages of recipients applying for 4 or more cards. So once a person claims that they lost a card, they go to an office like the one across the street and apply for a new one.
My baby.
Abusing food stamps angers people like Tina, who has health problems that make getting a job difficult.
Why? Your food stamps are selling when people like me that really need food and stuff survive.
As the largest program in the USDA, food stamp benefits cost a record $78 billion in 2011 alone. Critics worry that as the food stamp program expands, it creates more opportunity for fraud.
As the program gets larger and more people participate, there are certainly more opportunities for fraudulent behavior.
The spike in food stamp use is due in part to the ailing economy. But the real reason for growth, critics say, is due to eligibility.
More people are eligible now than they were prior to 2009, and that has accounted for a great deal of the increase in the number of people now eligible for food stamps. It has not been because of the economy.
For now, the number of people that are on food stamps is only expected to grow. But some that depend on the program have hope that better economic times are ahead.
I'm not a politician, but I can tell you this, that I think that Obama going to make it greater for us, you know what I'm saying?
In Washington, Liz Wall, RT.
Doug Hagmann, one guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. In case you're thinking that I'm slow on the uptake, and I'm pressing buttons in a slow manner, I'm not, actually. I was actually pressing buttons properly, on time, no less, yet getting a delay. So go figure. But I want to welcome each and every one of you to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. If you're just joining us, whether it be on the West Coast or elsewhere in the world. I'm solo tonight. My co-host, my son, Joe Hagmann, is otherwise tied up. He will be back tomorrow. So those of you who are looking for his rational voice of reason in this period of insanity, he'll be back. He'll be back tomorrow. He's doing well. Everything's fine. Actually, like I said, there's less mystery than much less mystery to him being gone, and maybe he'll talk about it tomorrow. The death of Hugo Chavez. In case you haven't heard about it, folks, Hugo Chavez is dead. Now, what does this mean for America? Well, And by the way, Venezuela, they've deployed their what's equivalent to their National Guard, their army and police. Actually, Chavez, or not Chavez, but the people around him have accused us, the United States, of giving him cancer. And I would have laughed at that statement, folks, 5 years ago. I would have actually laughed at that statement until I talked with Judith Very Baker. I don't know whether you know Judith Very Baker. I've ever heard of her. She's the author of a book called Me and Lee. That's a reference to Lee Harvey Oswald. Her name is Judith Very, V-A-R-Y, Baker, if you want to do a search on that and find the book. One of the few books, I've got to tell you, one of the few books that I could not stop reading. And I mean, I read everything I get my hands on, but I'll read a book and I'll read a couple of chapters, and I'm able to stop. And I'm able to put it down and get back to it, and, go read something else. And I read pretty quickly, by the way, and my comprehension level is pretty high. So, 600 to 800 words a minute with good retention. And so I'm just really a vociferous reader. But this book, Me and Lee, by Judith Very Baker, what an expose on, assuming it's true. Now, I believe it's true. Having spoken with her, now she's well up in years now, having spoken with her and seen the documentation that she used for the basis of that book, I believe, and fully, she was involved in the cancer research program at Roswell in Buffalo, New York. And she was also part of the cancer research program down at Tulane in Louisiana. But to hear her talk, she went from actually attempting to find a cure for cancer to making a cancer virus. And the plan was, according to Ms. Baker, the plan was to infect Fidel Castro with this cancer virus. If you think back at the time, and if you do your own research, you will see that we did, in fact, play with that or research that. And in fact, it did. There was a virus that was made that was communicable between monkeys. Holy cow. So is this claim very preposterous? The claim that appears in the UK Mail Online, that will, I guarantee you, that will receive that'll be poo-pooed by anybody with any person of rational sensibilities. Come on, it can't happen. It can't happen. I guarantee you, people will call it crazy. People will call it nuts. Now, do I have any evidence that this is being done, or this was done with Chavez? Of course not. But do not dismiss that cancer-causing virus. I do believe, and look back in history, how many enemies of the United States, or how many enemies within the United States, have succumbed suddenly to a rapidly moving cancer? And who questions it? Nobody. Cancer happens. Cancer happens. Bad cancer quickly happens. But it's interesting because after the death of Hugo Chavez, he died. By the way, he was only 58 years old. And the cause of death, by the way, is a respiratory infection as a result of cancer. So the cancer was actually the back cause. The respiratory infection was the main cause of his death. But he has long said that he was infected by imperialist enemies. They've deployed all of the troops and guards out there in Venezuela. What's going to happen now? It's anyone's guess. I do suspect that you're going to see essentially a continuation of this, of the Chavez doctrine. It's kind of, to me, Venezuela, because of the advance notice that they've had, that something was amiss and something was physically wrong with Chavez. To me, you're going to just see a continuation or a continuity of the agenda in terms of what's going on in Venezuela. Nothing like dead air there, right? That was intentional. And folks, I'll tell you what we're going to do it to give you a chance as well, because although we do have a lot of things to get to, we will be opening the phone lines in the third hour, 661-244-9839. Don't forget, I forgot to let you know, beginning or tomorrow, L.A. Marzulli is going to be a guest on our program. I mentioned something last night, so I got a couple of emails today that I did check. The person I was referring to, we're trying to get Pat and or Debbie Boone on just for half hour, 15 minutes or so, just to check in and get their take on what's going on. It's Pat Boone is a great guy. Debbie Boone is a great lady. It's kind of funny because I was talking with somebody close to them, and I've talked to them here in the recent past. I was talking to somebody close to them. She says, "Yeah, Debbie sang at my wedding," and I just envisioned my wedding. Yeah, she sang at mine too, except she was live with you. Mine, she was on a vinyl record. But anyway, so hopefully we can get both of them on or one of them on. I think it'd be a great show. I don't know if no, I didn't have to burp, Monica. I was and white shoes. See, I'm going to the chat room this time. And I do read, by the way. So you guys be good out there. I do read these chat logs afterwards. I can tell who's been good, who's been bad, and I can tell who's been naughty and nice. I know. All right. Okay, but anyway, back to the hard news. And it's something, sometimes, folks, I got a couple of emails today that really kind of, I don't know, it made me think a little bit. There's a lot of people that are caught up in this. I had mentioned doom porn before, but they're caught up in this spirit of helplessness. Look, and this is where Joe comes in very, very good. Joe's really good at talking about that and about how we can avoid being caught up in that spirit of helplessness by looking at the Bible, reading the Bible, following the Bible, and that's what we need. I mean, that's don't get that feeling of hopelessness. It's not worth it. It's only going to take you down. I mean, it's only going to take you down. What am I? What kind of language is that? See, and you got to laugh at yourself too. You can't take yourself so seriously, as serious as others, do on their broadcast. Sometimes you have to just stop and laugh. Sometimes you got to have to take the dog out for a walk. Sometimes you got to go look at the blossoming flowers, unless you're, of course, in the path of this horrendous snow, and then you got to go look at the marvel, at the wonders of this snow. And I should talk, and I should talk about the storm as well, because I find it a little bit freaky, even though it does kind of have its precedent. I still kind of see this storm as a little bit freaky, and I see some things going on. If you listen to the broadcast with Jimmy Wood with the type of Tesla technology that we reportedly do have, and this, by the way, is confirmed to me. We do have Tesla technology. The intelligence services have that. The government, the bad guys in the government, or even some, I mean, the people who are trying to take this country down have this technology, or shall I say that the power elite have this technology, or have access to and have the ability to use this technology. So, don't discount, for example, the freaky nature of these weather. Don't discount weather modifications. Is what I'm trying to say. Don't discount the like I did, the chemtrails. Question why they're there, and search for, and do your own research and search for answers. But don't discount it, even though some people say, "Oh, it makes you look like a real Looney Tune." Well, who's the Looney Tune when you watch the video of parts of the Trade Center just turning into dust right before your very eyes? I mean, you're going to fall for the fall for the official narrative, or are you gonna believe what you're seeing in front of your eyes? I prefer to believe what I see rather than the official narrative. Now, I did get an email. I want to address this. This is from Phoebe. Phoebe writes to me. She says, I've been listening to your show for a few weeks, and I've learned a lot, but I'm still confused quite a bit. I can tell that she's listening to our show because that's most people are. Last night, the 4th of March, you mentioned that we have let things go to where they are because we have not stood up and done anything about it. And then the email says, I think Joe said something about going to Second Amendment rallies. Now, the last time Greg Evenson was on your show, he said the SWAT teams will burst into our homes because they know who has guns and they will kill us. I think he said they have photos of everyone who goes to these rallies in gun shows, etc. I don't own a gun, but I am a U.S. Air Force veteran from the 1970s, and I don't want our Constitution dissolved. She writes, it sounds as if it's too late for us to really do anything. It is like when we were in grade school and had those girls to hide under our desks. Now, the younger people listening to this program will remember nothing about those drills because you didn't have them, but we had them. I remember those. The siren goes off, and if we're being attacked by a nuclear bomb, how to save yourself is to get under your desk. That'll help. Remember those drills? To those people old enough, and you know who you are, remember those drills? Get underneath your desk. That'll save you from the nuke. Well, and I mean, obviously some cover, depending on where, if you're far enough away from a nuclear blast and, getting away from the glass and such. I understand that philosophy, but hiding underneath the desk is not going to protect you if the bomb is close enough now to really hurt you. But you get the idea, okay? But see, Phoebe represents a number of people that have emailed me like this, and I just want to address this because I feel a responsibility to address this. Here's the fact. Every rally, pro-Second Amendment rally, according to the DHS contact, individual known as Rosebud, and again, that name is, there's nothing super spy versus spy with that name, but it's just a name that we use. According to my source, in the past and even today, every Second Amendment rally, pro-Second Amendment rally, every pro-abortion, or pro-life, anti-abortion rally, every single cause group, meaning if you were just a pro-life person or a sovereign citizen movement, well, that's something totally different. But if you're a single cause group, for example, or if you are perceived as a threat to this administration, as a political threat. I'm not talking about a real threat where you're going to storm and overtake the White House and Capitol and all that. I'm not talking about that kind of threat. I'm talking about a political dissident threat. Each and every rally, peaceful rally, is under surveillance by an element of the Department of Homeland Security. So, Phoebe, where you got that was perhaps from something I said when Greg Evenson was on. Yes, they do take videotape. Yes, they do use facial recognition software. But they do blatantly elsewhere, too. So it really doesn't matter. Does it matter if you show up or someone shows up at these rallies, even without a gun or even not owning a gun? Is it going to matter? It was just, Alex+Jones had a lot about this recently. Mike Adams and, the people, the regular people who talk about this and us, about the recent, not deployment, but purchase of MRAPs. And the MRAPs are those funky-looking things. They look like Humvees, but they're super. They got all kinds of armor on them and little gun portals in them and such, and they look like basically they look like a washer or dryer on wheels. And it was said, the news was, well, these vehicles were purchased by basically all the states in the United States, and it came out to, if you do the math and if you really get into do the research, you've got just about one for almost every county in the United States. Now that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. But if you think about it, imagine in a county where, like, for example, Los Angeles, Metro Los Angeles laws, or imagine the county where New York City is, or any big city, Dade County, where Miami and such, or Pinellas, which has really got some problems. Just imagine that, just having one of those MRAPs or one of those armored vehicles in that area. Is that a lot? No. It's not really a lot. So the reason I mentioned that, and also the ammunition purchases too. I was told by my source as well, the ammunition purchases, this comes from two sources, one the DHS and one from another person. The ammunition purchases, a lot of the recent ammunition purchases are to slow down the purchases of the citizens to buy ammunition. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does, in a way. In a way, it does. Is there more to it? Absolutely, there's more to it. You see, because there, and I did do some searching on some internet forums, and I noticed people saying, you know what, people who are talking about the ammunition buyout by the DHS, 5 bullets for every citizen, every man, woman, child in America. They're crazy. It's not the truth. They're saying. I think one was like, I can't remember, Common Sense blog or something. I don't know. And this person said, "Oh, thank you for clearing this up," because he heard from this somebody a purchaser for DHS or somebody saying, "Well, the numbers didn't work out right." It was just what he was saying was what people like Alex+Jones are saying, and Mike Adams, and even Doug and Joe Hagmann. Not true. This is all hype, and it's not true. Well, no, it is true. It's true. And what's not true is the explanations given on those types of websites to calm people down. What they're doing is they're trying to take a lot of this ammunition out of the hands of the American people, out of circulation, causing a backlog. But see, that's just one part of it. That's just one part of it. The other part is, yes, and of course they're going to use some for training. Some, please, don't send me emails now. I understand you don't necessarily train with hollow points. Some departments do train with what they carry. Although, now, that's why these blanket statements really can get people in a lot of trouble, because there's an exception just about to every rule. If I came out and said there's no department in America, no police department, no federal agency, no whatever that actually qualifies with hollow points. No, that's not true. I do know of a very small. Just for one instance, I know of a very small police agency I've dealt with in Colorado that uses what they carry, and they carry hollow points, and and we do it. But is that the majority? Is that the norm? Of course not. So there will be people and people on the internet to bring that up and say, well, see, look, it's what you're saying is not true. You're just making big mountains out of molehills, and you're falling into this conspiracy nonsense, and you're engaged in doom porn. Well, that's not true, because what is coming is, according to my DHS sources, this. It's kind of, if you go back and look at the previous articles from my DHS source named Rosebud, saying that all of this is going to be revolved around the economy. Essentially, there could be other elements to it. There is no single point failure to the takedown of the United States. Please understand that. There is no single point failure to what their plans are. That is the installation of a single one world government. My goodness, I'm sitting here, I'm feeling like Mel Gibson in that movie Conspiracy. Isn't it Conspiracy? I'm looking over where Joe sits. I've got there's an empty chair. I should probably put like a CPR dummy over there. I don't know. No, it's almost like I'm hearing me say this, and I'm thinking, like, my gosh, am I really saying this? Because 5 years ago, I would not have said this, but yes, I'm saying this. And the proof is right there in front of us. You know, today, and InfoWars has this too. No, I'm not doing a commercial for InfoWars, thanks very much. But no, InfoWars has this. The drones, according to the information I have, by the way, yes, the government can use armed drones against you, meaning armed drones on American soil. We've been saying this for a long time. Lethal drones won't be used to target American citizens on U.S. soil. This from Eric Holder to Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Let me back this up. The headline at InfoWars is, yes, your government can use armed drones against you. Despite reassurances following the Christopher Dorner manhunt that lethal drones won't be used to target American citizens on U.S. soil, a letter from Holder to Rand Paul says otherwise. Boy, I left an important part of that sentence out, didn't I? Anyway, it's possible to imagine an extraordinary circumstance which it would be necessary and appropriate under the Constitution and applicable to the laws of the United States for the President to authorize the military use, or to authorize the military to use lethal force within the territory of the United States. That letter partially posted by Mother Jones. Now, folks, think about this. We've got 30,000 drones flying above the sky right now. Some of those are surveillance drones. Some of those are Predator armed drones. If you think for one moment we don't have armed drones flying above us right now, you're absolutely mistaken. We have both for surveillance and for interdiction purposes, or sanction purposes, if you will, carrying various degrees of armaments, types of armaments. But this is not new. This is nothing new. This has been going on now for, I believe it's 30-some months. I just want people to understand what they're seeing right now is the latter stages of what's taking place, which brings me back to the email by Phoebe, who said, it seems like it's too late, and it sounds like it's too late for us to really do anything. No, it's not. Now, what we need to do, we need to understand the problem. We need to, and if we have the ability to understand the causes of the problem and the effects of the problem. So in other words, as I referenced earlier, go back in history to find out where things went off the rails and who pushed the things off the rails, who's behind it. Because looking at this as a crime scene, like I would do, I would definitely look as far back as I can. When did this come off the rails? Who's behind it? Who's taking care of it right now? And then how can we fix it? Or at the very least, how can we get out of the way when things really go off the deep end or go into the deep end? How can we get ourselves out of the way? Kind of like that, the fire in the station nightclub. Recognizing the threat, acting on the threat right away. This is what we need to do. We don't want to be one of the trampled. And with all due respect, and my heart goes out to the victims of that nightclub, in any type of situation like that. I'm not using them as a crass example. I'm using them as a real example, and knowing that real people perished that day. And again, my heart goes out to them. But look, we don't want to be victims, but yet we want to be able to do something about it. So there are certain things that we can do. Don't think for one moment that just by going to, for example, by showing up at a Second Amendment rally is going to be problematic for you. And I talked to, just because, look, they've already got your name, your number, they've already got all that stuff, 99 different ways and different means. And so that's already been passed. You're past that point. So the question, and this is brought up in the intent, I think, of the email, is are they going to use these MRAPs, these militarized vehicles and SWAT teams, are they going to use them to bust into your house and take your guns and kill you? Well, I think from a logical point of view, I don't think that's going to be possible, at least not in this venue or in this condition that we're in right now. But I'm sure there will be some very public examples made of some very public people or some very private people who will be made public as threats to the security of our country, especially as the economy begins to unravel. The takedown and the takeover of the United States, yes, is going to involve this. But and I'm speaking to Phoebe, and as well as anyone else who has this concern, do not stop what you're doing right now, because you might be afraid, even if you're older, even if you're infirmed or impaired, or whatever, don't be afraid to take a stand. Because if you don't take a stand right now, there's nobody that's going to take a stand for you. Think about that man. And I talked to a good friend, the intelligence insider that I've got. Talked to him about that young man in Tiananmen Square, standing in front of that tank. Do you remember that photograph? That lone single person standing in front of that tank, stopping a column of tanks in China. Think about what it took for that person to go in front of that tank and to make the statement that he did. And as we talked, the gentleman that the friends with, as we talked, he said, the person in that tank stopped. Now, he could have put it in gear and run over the guy, but he didn't. There was humanity exchanged. There was an exchange of humanity at that moment. When the United States comes to that point, and it will, I don't think people have. I just don't think people understand that we're going to get to that point. But we're going to have to hope that humanity does prevail. That brother and brother, there's a level of communication that prevails. But two, when you're in front of that tank, and the gentleman I was speaking to said, if I was that person, I would not plan on being run over. It's better to be I'm trying to remember exactly his exact words, a live dog than a dead tiger. It's something close to that. So, of course, if it was him in the tank began to approach, he certainly would take evasive action to live another day, to fight another day. But all things that we've just touched on, things are looking bad. Things are looking like there's going to be war against the DHS and others, Obama's civilian security force, the armies of the elite, the armies of the architects of our demise, whether they're internationalists or nationalists, or whether they're from this country or other countries, whether it be the Soroses or the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or whoever, the people of Bilderberg. And a lot of people dismiss the relevance of the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. Don't dismiss those people just because it sounds conspiratorial. Don't dismiss those people. It's not crazy to fold them into the mix of suspects. Because just look at everything. Look at is it that much of a leap to see the relationship, the people, the relationship that, for example, the members of the CFR and Trilateral Commission and Bilderbergers, is it that much of a leap to see that those very same people that belong to that group are also the architects of our demise? I don't think so. I really don't think it's that big of a leap. But anyway, just looking here at a few things that are coming across the wire. I just want to give hope to Phoebe and others. Look, with the rapid nature of things happening, and all the hyperbole, and everything that is everything that we're seeing taking place. And I was talking earlier to my wife. I said, can you imagine that? Can you remember, when is the last time? And the obvious answer to this is never. You've seen a pope abdicate. You've seen the Vatican Bank, which, by the way, holds a lot of influence. The president of the Vatican Bank being replaced a year ago, and then the Pope abdicating, and then lightning striking St. Peter's Basilica twice on the day of the abdication. Then you've got Obama going to Israel. And then you've got this extraordinary dissension of locusts in Egypt and all various parts of the Middle East. And then you've got the economic indicators. You've got everything's upside down. It's like a hall of mirrors with the economy. When is the last time we saw this confluence of events? I don't think we have, at least not in the current incarnation. So is this all conspiracy nonsense? Is this muddling? Of course not. Of course not. It's not. But who brought us here? Do we need to know that? Sure we do. I believe we do. I was going through some research projects I had done, and I looked back and I looked back and I was wondering why we invaded Afghanistan, why we just didn't smite the Taliban and then get the heck out of there. Well, the answers are in the war machine, in the perpetual state of warfare that we have to have. See, the reason people don't understand, in my view, and you can weigh in on this here in another 18 minutes, and get in line now if you want to. It's 661-244-9839. Press 1. 661-244-9839. Press 1 to talk. But the reason a lot of people don't understand what's going on, in my view, is because we haven't looked at what's happened in the recent and not so recent history. Because we can go back, folks. We can go back to the relationship of the Saudi royals with the Bush family, for example, even to the Carter administration. You can go back to, how far do you want to go back? We can go back to, remember BCCI? Remember that scandal? The Bank of Credit and Commerce International, the Pakistani founder of BCCI. Remember James Bath back in 1974? He sold the sale of an F-27 turboprop to Salim bin Laden. This stuff was going on back in the 70s and earlier, of course. After oil was discovered first in Saudi Arabia back in 1938, well, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Well, if you look at how we structured our energy plan and our defenses and how we placed and positioned our dollar and what we've done and the role of, for example, Saudi Arabia and others over the years, it's how we got to where we are right now. Think about the history behind BCCI, the money laundering that had gone on. Think about remember that. This is another thing too. Silver. Remember the Hunt brothers back in the late 70s, early 80s? William Herbert Hunt, Nelson Bunker Hunt, attempt to corner the silver market. All of this is tied together. All of these things. James Bath. I mentioned James Bath. Friends with Senator Lloyd Bentsen, who was the 1988 vice presidential candidate. A friend of George W. Bush. He went duck hunting with James Baker, who was close with George Herbert Walker Bush. who, Ba'ath, by the way, was close to Salim bin Laden back in 1976, who had business ties with the Bush family. But it wasn't just through the Bush family. It extended into, or went back through the Carter administration and went back up through the Clinton administration. All of this is tied together. You have to have an understanding of what took place before today to understand where we are today. Baker bots, remember that? Fulbright and Jaworski, the legal department at Pennzoil. Baker bots, or Fulbright and Jaworski. As if it seems like I'm just kind of throwing names out there. These are good things to take a look at on your own time and kind of connect the dots yourself. Because, once again, we did not get to where we are right now without a lot of history. Even going back through Iran. Remember Iran? Iraq, the Iran-Contra affair, but even, we'll go back to Carter. Remember when Carter gave Iraq the green light to attack Iran? You probably don't, but it did happen. Via Saudi Arabia, Carter gave Iraq a green light to attack Iran. By encouraging Iraq to attack, the U.S. hoped to set the stage to end the Iranian hostage crisis with a possible arms for hostages deal. But think about this. Carter and his handlers provided material and monetary support for both Iran and Iraq. Carter, his handlers, I would say more his associates, his cabinet, the people surrounding him, as well as the people that were involved in BCCI, were also members of the Bilderbergers and trilateral groups and commissions and what have you. But see, it all ties together. It all ties together. It's just some search terms for you to look up there. Some search, some homework to do, if you will. The Marianne sent me this. I want to get into this before we get to the top of the hour. Saudi Arabia is, and I don't know whether you heard this, folks, but Saudi Arabia is involved in the execution, a method of execution we haven't seen in a while. Crucifixion in Saudi Arabia. And the crucifixion is being used. Now, what this is on jihadwatch.org, but what is not said here, crucifixion in Saudi Arabia is being used against people who blaspheme the religion of Islam. 7 Saudis were sentenced to death by crucifixion and firing squad. They were postponed for a week. I believe it was today. But nonetheless, they are still, their sentences are being reviewed. But the fact of the matter is that when we're talking in 2013 of a country using crucifixion as a method of state-sanctioned execution, we should be taking, and we're friends with this country. We are friends with the Saudi government, that they should take people who don't conform to their religious standards, who believe that it is a crime, that you cannot insult Islam in any way, shape, or form, that crucifixion is warranted, or even death by a firing squad, just simply for insulting their prophet Muhammad, or by slandering the religion of Islam. These are the people that we're propping up monetarily. This is the government. This is the belief system that we have opted, that the American people have said, you know what, it's okay now, even though maybe you didn't sign on to this personally. The Americans in general have said, yeah, it's okay, not a problem. Let's side with, or let's take them on as our friends. And as if that was not crazy enough, Marianne, thank you very much just for keeping me just out of sorts here. Yale University. Folks, buckle your seatbelts for this. National Review Online has an article that's published today. I don't even want to say this, but normalizing bestiality at Yale. Can you believe that as distasteful of a subject this is, the sexual perversions that we have, like pedophilia, they're slowly being pushed toward normalization themselves. Now, bestiality is on its way to becoming an accepted practice. If you want to read it, I'm not going to get into it. If you want to read it, you can go to nationalreviewonline.com or nationalreview.com. That's nationalreview.com. You'll find the story there. The reason I brought that up is the moral degradation of our country. Can you accept, folks, can you accept this as part of, I mean, can you see how far down we've gone? And can you see the fact that we are now, I mentioned this in another program. It's one thing, if you look at the country as a garment, our country as a garment, if you've got a ripped seam, you can take it to a seamstress, or it's easy to fix, or it's not as difficult to fix if you rip the garment at a seam. But let's say there's a threadbare patch in the fabric, there is no easy fix to that. There is no easy fix to that, and that's where we are right now today. We've got a garment or a piece of fabric. Let's say it's a suit coat for guys or a dress for women. Okay? Well, if you rip the seam, you could. It's mendable. It's fixable. But what the architects of our demise have done is they have caused the fabric, the interwoven threads, to be just threadbare, to be worn through. And that is not an easy fix. And that's what we're seeing right now. That is exactly what we're seeing right now. I think people really have to know that what we're facing when we talk about things like bestiality, when we talk about the normalization of things like pedophilia, and we talk about the normalization of homosexuality, instead of redefining instead of verifying or reinforcing what's normal, the redefinition of what's normal, folks, that's a huge problem. That's a spiritual problem, as Steve Quayle says, one that cannot be fixed with political solutions. We've got a spiritual problem that cannot be fixed with political solutions, and that is so true. But when I saw that, I had to read it twice. But that is, in fact, what's taking place. Any questions now? Do you have any questions in terms of why things are so bad? I mean, to me, it's just absolutely incredible. The humanity, the lack of godliness in this country. It's just unbelievable. A couple other things here. I was distracted there for a moment. I'm sorry. A couple other things I wanted to take. I just want to bring your attention to. I mentioned it too, this March storm. The March storm that has gone across in fact, I've talked to a couple of people that this has affected, named Saturn, by the way. I just want to make a comment on this. If you look at the path of the storm, the timing of the storm, it does make me wonder. I mean, look, we had the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962. People know about this. In fact, I recall that storm not real clear, but I recall my parents talking about that storm. So storms do happen, but I got to tell you, there's something about this storm, as well as the storm of Sandy, as well as on 9/11, the Hurricane Aaron. Oh, you didn't know about that? Hurricane Aaron. There's something about the storm that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I think it has to do with how it swathed through things. There was somebody who posted in one of the forums. There were two in 1993. There was a storm in 1993 that took place. There was a video that there were two circulating jet streams over the United States, one far north and one further south, and the two weren't supposed to meet. I'm sorry, this was March of 1992, and they did. And it created like the perfect storm. And I think folks might remember that. But it, on the weather map, or on the map of the weather at that time, it looked like a hurricane was over the United States, but of snow, not of rain. And it was quite interesting. So if you go back through these storms, just look at, I would urge everyone to look at the history, especially because when we're talking about, and I believe we're talking about the practicing, if you will, or the we're talking about Tesla type of equipment that I think is being used. Now, I could be totally wrong. I could be half right and half wrong. But what I'm seeing here, from 9/11 to the present, 9/11 for sure, but even to the present, and especially Hurricane Sandy, the way that acted, I think that we're seeing some Tesla-type energy weapons at play. I don't know, folks. I'm open to your ideas. The people who are knowledgeable about storms, I'm open to you on that, whatever you might have. But just in summary, think back over the last 2 months. I mean, this is March 5th, so think back just January, February, the signs from the heavens, the prophetic events that have happened in February or since the beginning of the year. The media is not talking about things like the resignation of the Pope, or I'm sorry, the papal, the bank of the Vatican Bank. They're not talking about that. They make a little reference to the other events that take place with respect to the lightning. I mean, we can go through things one at a time, and of course the signs in the heavens and the weather, the locusts, all of this. Of course, the locusts are in March, but if you go through all of this, the massive wildlife kills. Think about those. Pastor Paul Begley has done a great job talking about that. The bird kills. And I see people trying to explain away and doing a great job of saying, hey, well, this happens. It's cyclical. It happens all the time. But the confluence of events, could this not be prophecy? Could this not be a combination of prophecy playing out? Or could this not be some of this engineered and some of this playing into prophecy and some of this God's prophecy, God's word or God's actions? I think it could. So it doesn't have to be either or. It could be both. But to blow it off, just to blow the events off, no. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Reports. I'm Doug Hagmann, flying solo tonight. I'm going to take your calls now at the top of this hour, 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. If you want to get a hold of me by email, I don't check the chat room. I'm sorry about that. If you want to get a hold of me by email, just go to HomelandSecurityUnions.com, click on my name on the left-hand side, and fire me off an email. I'll be checking the email during the course of the show. I want to welcome everyone to this show who's listening in New Zealand. Got an email from someone in New Zealand saying that they're listening. I want to welcome you to the Hagmann Report. Folks, we're going to be right back after these messages. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that tomorrow, L.A. Marzulli will be our guest. In terms of the topic, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about, but we're going to have a lot to talk about. That's for sure. Not sure exactly what we're going to cover, but he's always a terrific guest. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Jessica.
Mr. President, to your question, what could you do? First of all, couldn't you just have them down here and refuse to let them leave the room until you have a deal?
Jessica, I am not a dictator. I'm the president. So ultimately, if Mitch McConnell or John Boehner say we need to go to catch a plane, I can't have Secret Service block the doorway.
And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Sans one Hagmann, that being Joseph Hagmann. He'll be with us tomorrow, Joe, my son. It's amazing how much he does behind the scenes, trying to get all these buttons and switches and mouse clicks and everything just right. How am I doing? And playing things out of order and playing things over. Now, things happen. Let's go right to the phones this hour. We're going to go to 303 area code, who's been on the phone the longest. That's 303 area code. You've been on the phone the longest. We're going to go right to you right now. 303, you're up with Doug Hagmann. What's on your mind?
Our Lord, our God, you brought lasting honor to your name by rescuing your people from Egypt in a great display of power. but we have sinned and are full of wickedness. In view of all your faithful mercies, Lord, please turn your furious anger away from your city of Jerusalem, your holy mountain. All the neighboring nations mock Jerusalem and your people because of our sins and the sins of our ancestors.
Indeed. We need to... I can't add to that. Anything else, caller?
Absolutely. I mean, talking so much about the different schools of thought on 9/11, we all understand what HAARP is. It controls our weather. It's Tesla energy. And it seems like we all become so engrossed in what 9/11 is from a scientific and even a political standpoint. I think we lose sight of what the bigger picture is, kind of like Rabbi Kahn's The Harbinger. But my question for you, Doug, is when you had Judy Wood and Pete Santilli on, it seemed like you guys took a back seat and weren't able to ask any questions. Were they in control of the show that day?
No. And let me be perfectly clear with that. My conversation with both Dr. Wood and Pete Santilli was they would provide a presentation, and they had done this a couple of times before, where actually worked out with commercials to actually fill a 3-hour period and get all of the information across. So what we did was allow them to present as much of the information that's reflected in the book, in Dr. Judy Wood's book, as possible. So no, I mean, it was no, of course not. I mean, we could have pulled the plug any time. It was just a matter of how we set that up. Was that uncomfortable to hear, or was that uncomfortable? Did it seem like an uncomfortable format?
It just kind of seemed a little uncomfortable on your and Joe's perspective, like you were almost like kept within some parameters. But like at the beginning of the show, when you guys first pulled up Judy Wood, you guys said, "Hello, how you doing?" And the first words out of her mouth were, "Is Pete Santilli on yet? Is Pete there?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
it seemed kind of like she uses Pete Santilli as her blanket or tack dog kind of, and I just got to ask you a question on that.
No, and I'm glad you did, because, in fact, I got a couple of emails on that, too. And I'll tell you flat out, Pete had on his computer all of the frames or the, what did she call those panels, plates, whatever you call them, the PowerPoint. So it was on his computer that they resided. She didn't have that, so she was just worried because the conversation before the show came on was, well, you know, Pete's got the stuff and Pete's got the PowerPoint presentation. So since we're doing this visually through Christians United, you know, she wanted to make sure that they were all there. So no, there was nothing at all nefarious or underhanded or even as my word, uncomfortable about it. It was just a matter of trying to get actually 4 or 5 people together all at once and having it go off without a hitch. That's all that was. But hopefully that answers your question.
Well, sure thing. Again, I definitely implore everybody to look up Rabbi Kahn and his Harbinger book, because the parallels that it draws from a historical standpoint and exactly how we parallel Israel, that God's taken his protection away from us. I mean, we do have Russian troops. We do have United Nations troops. We are on the brink of a nuclear exchange, it seems. And I live right here in Colorado with all the gun grabbing mayhem and madness. And we have several military installations, so we are a sitting target for any kind of nuclear exchange.
Let me just say this. I'm a fan of Rabbi Kahn, and I would definitely urge everyone to look at Harbinger's. 9/11 was definitely a wake-up call for us, and Rabbi Kahn gives us outlines 9 progressive warnings, beginning, I think, or centered around Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10. But there are 9 warnings, and we have basically, according to Rabbi Kahn, and I totally agree with this, spit in the eye of God by, instead of repenting for our past sins and accepting that 9/11, or at least spiritually accepting that 9/11 was a wake-up call from God, we basically spit in his eye and said we're not going to repent. And that goes for, and I could check off the various alarms or the various warnings, the replacement, with the Gazette stone on July 4th, 2004, as it's representing the spirit of defiance, the sycamore tree of ancient Israel, replaced with a conifer tree, and on and on and on. So, and we've talked about this, caller, and I think maybe you've heard this, but yes, you're exactly right. We need to repent, and as you said in the beginning, repentance is the key to this. I didn't mean to interrupt it, so go on.
Oh, you're definitely interrupting. I deferred to what you had to say. This is your show and everybody else in the chat room. I would recommend you trying to get Rabbi Khan on. And there's just something about Messianic Jews that's just amazing because, the Jews are God's chosen people, and Israel and Jerusalem is where it's at. And to hear the perspective of someone who is from the Judea tribe and a believer in Yeshua HaMashiach, it's refreshing. And the work Rabbi Khan has done, if everybody hasn't checked it out, just go on YouTube and look up even the WorldNet Daily video that they've done. I think that by far and away is more important than it seems like the two fracturing camps. You have your Alex+Jones truth when it comes to 9/11, and it seems like you have your Judy Wood and Pete Santilli truth. And there's a lot of facts on both sides. It's too bad we can't just find some common ground, which I believe is Rabbi Khan's work, and it would be another blessing with the. You guys have a lot of great guests, and I think Rabbi Khan would be another great guest.
No, I agree. In fact, I'll reach out to Rabbi Khan and see if he'll come on. If not for a program, for half a program or an hour or whatever, because he's got a lot to say. So, and folks, you can find Rabbi Khan on Sid Roth, interviewed on sidroth.org and so on. So, I appreciate the call, my friend. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless. All right. Yeah, and folks, we have to understand too. We cannot turn our back on the spiritual warnings that we're getting. In 2008, on the anniversary of 9/11, remember September of 2008? Remember, if you look at the 9/11 as being, we'll say, an economic type of warning, because of course, New York, economic center. 7 years, and that number is important, 7 years after 9/11, the stock market lost 777 points, $700 billion, 7% loss, 7 years after 9/11. You think there's the hand of God in that? Do you think that there is the hand of God in that, the economic shaking, in exchange or in response to the very hubris-laden responses that we will rebuild, that basically we're not going to repent? Yeah, I think we have to take a good, close, hard look at the harbingers, as referenced by that caller. Going in order of wait time, we're going to go to 724. 724, you're on with Doug Hagmann.
Hello, Mr. Hagmann. It's an honor to speak with you, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you on. What's on your mind?
Thank you, sir. Two issues. One on President Chavez and his passing. I had caught an article right after he had was diagnosed with the cancer, and he had done these regular talks on his television station down there in Venezuela. And one of the things he did was he called out to Jesus, and he said, Jesus, please help me. And he said this in sincerity, and I had happened to catch it. I think it was a YouTube, and then there was an article written about it. So for anyone out there that, Chavez had his issues with socialism and that sort of thing, and I understand that. But as a man who called out and called upon the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, he did. And I just wanted folks out there to know that there was a moment in time where he appeared to genuinely and sincerely call upon the name of Christ. It kind of reminds me of the thief on the cross, that moment where the thief said, please remember me when you come into your kingdom. So I think that for all of the people out there, the Hannitys of the world and Glenn Beck who did nothing but slam Chavez, I think that Chavez did some good things. And I think that the biggest thing was he did name the name of Christ when he was in trouble. So, which we all have as believers at one point or another, I think. So, I just wanted to point that out.
You know what? Thanks for pointing it out. It's interesting you say that. I did not catch or see his appeal to Jesus. Okay, I did not see that. I was not aware of that. I am aware of what Chavez had done for his people. Now, in no way do I adhere to or do I endorse his socialism or his political things. How do we know, caller? And I don't think we can know his heart, especially when you are faced with the ultimate mortality. And we're all going to be in that position one day. Given the fact, assuming that we're going to have, we're all going to have to look at our mortality one day, regardless of the situation. Okay. Who's to say what was in his heart at the time of his passing? I don't know. And I think that to summarily say that he was just that he's burning in hell. I saw something about him burning in hell, a headline, and I thought, well, that's pretty presumptuous.
Yeah, same thing. I'd seen some negative comments too, and because I had read that article and saw that at one point, and I thought, okay, here's a man who called upon the name of the Lord Jesus. So, I mean, that in itself, that short moment right there, like I said, we don't know, but that sure would show that maybe he's not, and he wasn't such a bad guy after all. No, I don't support his socialistic policies either, but he was well loved by the poor, and I know the man did try to help out a lot, and he helped the Americans that he helped out, with the Citgo energy program, the people that would get 100 gallons of heating oil a year, through that program. Now, I'm sure that he had, there were political motives for it, but the fact is there were a lot of people that did get help from that program. So that is out there.
Exactly, and we cannot know. For example, there are certain things in the media that we don't know, for example, are true or not. We can verify, of course. We have verified his heating assistance to people here in the United States. Now, does that make him like, the angel of the day? Of course not. But, it's we cannot depend solely on the media to hear what others are doing. There's a lot of misrepresentation. You bring up some great points. Anything else before I cut you loose?
Yeah, real quick. I graduated high school in 1983 before I went to college, and I think about the World Circuit 1980 and the things that you had talked about, and I made some notes while you were talking the last hour, some of the things that reminded me of that time. Just to give you an idea of what the late 70s was before the interest rates or the prime rate blew up to 21%. A lot of people don't remember that, with it in this.
Yeah, I bought my first house, by the way, at 19% interest. I was an intelligent guy. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
You could go buy a brand new Ford F-250 for between $5,900 and $6,900, and if you worked in the steel mill or the coal mine here in western Pennsylvania, you made enough money to generally pay cash. You didn't need finance to pay the bankers an interest rate because you could have basically afford to go buy a new one every year or every 2 years, which in turn they had the money, they made the money. Now some could argue that the unions got greedy, and I understand the whole union management thing, but still the fact was there were many people that bought brand new trucks every year or every other year, and they took their old one back and they paid the difference and they bought a new one, and that's when the money was good. I would say it pretty much collapsed about the time I graduated. So I've known nothing but the decline of Western civilization. I think another thing to remember is there was 5% savings. You got 5% if you went to your bank. They gave you 5% on your passbook savings account. That was something that I remembered. Let's see, what other... Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. You open up a savings account, it was 5%. This is back, goodness, I think this is, now I'm thinking back 82, 83, But I remember too a certain with the onset of certain investments back then, you were talking about returns, in the double digits, like 19, 20, 21% returns on investments. But at that same time, and you mentioned about the unions too. Look, I agree that the unions they have some responsibility to where we're at today, but they're also used as the whipping boy by the Fed and by people associated with the elite to cover the tracks of what the elite, the bankers and Wall Street people are doing. So it's not just the unions. And you're right. You rightfully pointed that out. So when you hear political pundits beating the war drum against the unions, the big bad unions, yes, some of that's correct, but not all of it. That's right. So you very well pointed out.
Okay, Mr. Hagmann, just wanted to throw a few of those tidbits out there, and again, it was an honor to speak with you, sir. Have a good evening.
God bless, my friend. It was an honor to have you on. Call back again anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks, when we were talking about this, and it's amazing. Political pundits, Arbusto Energy, George W. Bush, Arbusto Energy, which is, what does Arbusto Energy stand for or mean in Spanish? Arbusto? What's the word Arbusto stand for in Spanish? I'm not good at Spanish, but according to everything I've seen, it's Bush in Spanish. Research Arbusto Energy and how that came to be, and how Arbusto in 1984 merged with the Spectrum, and research Harken Energy as well. And Soros is from 1986. Harken Energy, Soros, Harken Energy actually bought Bush's company for $2.25 million in stock in 1986, which was Harken Energy. Why would I even mention this? Well, Harken Energy and Gas, by the way, was owned by Harvard University and George Soros, two of the players that we're seeing today in this, the latter, George Soros, in this economic global meltdown, and Harvard University, the purveyor, one of the biggest purveyors of propaganda for the Federal Reserve from 1913 or 1910, actually, to the present. So if you don't think that there's an incestuous relationship, or if you even want to take me to task for bringing up these seemingly random points, connect the dots, go back in history, put things together, treat our economy today as a crime scene. I think you'll be surprised at what you find. Going back to the phones, we're going to take 719. 719, you're on with Doug Hagmann.
Hello, is that me?
Hello, that's you.
Hello.
You're up.
Thank you. I wanted to say you guys do a great show. Also, you caught me off guard. You had mentioned earlier. Hello?
I like catching people off guard too.
Oh.
I like
all the bullets that are being bought, all of the military acquiring. And one of the things that came to mind is what if they're going to plan on selling it back to the American people? Also, the thing that I find interesting is the first caller, you're talking about the harbingers and when the Israelites went against God, and God allowed them to be invaded by their enemies. And I kind of wonder if that isn't going to happen to the Americas, to the United States at some point, no matter who or what. Because if God didn't want something to happen, John the Baptist said that nobody has anything in God unless God allows it. So if these people they may think they can control the weather, but if God really wanted to put a stop to it, it wouldn't be a problem for him to put a stop to it. So he's allowing things to happen, even if they think they're controlling it. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, and a question is, if we're going to be invaded by our enemies, if that is, and go into captivity, which one? I mean, I'm hearing something about Chinese on the southern border, Russians here. I mean, have they carved it up and Chinese get one portion, the Russian gets another portion, and like whoever the people that we don't even know, not the people that we see, get maybe the middle or some portion of it. And that's another thing, too. I thought at the French Revolution, they always had somebody to blame it on. You know, all the people that you see, not the people behind the scenes that we don't see, the people we do see. And that Russian guy, Yuri or whatever, that was doing those, that I watched, that back in the 80s that was doing those classes, he said, you know, those people that help bring down a country are always, you know, the ones on the forefront, the ones we see are all the ones that are usually taken out of the way. Or because they're become useful idiots, right? So I know I'm throwing a lot out here, but I did want to ask you a question because something when I was telling, and I can't even wake up my family. I'm just at the point to give out. Nobody believes me. They think I'm crazy. But one of the things I told her, I said, you know, these issues regarding sexuality, man, woman, you know, we're completely going against God's law. I said, the next thing you're going to see is bestiality and sexuality. Not that I want credit for that, but I said, you're going to see it's going to keep getting worse. You can't keep taking that moral code and bending it and think it's going to get better. It's going to get worse. So when you said that tonight, you said nationalreview.com. Is that correct?
I believe it was, and I want to thank Marianne for this. I think it was National Review that brought this up. Let me just double check here.
And would be under bestiality, sex. I mean, what do I look under?
Yes. National Review it's an article by Wesley J. Smith dated today, March 5th, 2013, Normalizing Bestiality at Yale.
Okay, normalizing.
Right.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I'm sorry, not that I want credit for it, but and then that's not a credit issue. I just kept saying that you can't keep bending morality and bending God's morality and expect it to get better. It doesn't. And, 400 million babies gone either by export of our our plans, not just here but worldwide because of because how they do the money things. When they give money to people, you have to do this, follow our rules or whatever. Also, I'm going to call for people to pray because I do not want anything to happen to Obama while he's in Israel. The rise of anti-Jewish stuff is on the rise again, and if anything happens to him, I just don't want Israel to get blamed, and it's just sad. So whatever the situation is, I think we have to keep in mind that God allows those things to happen. And I think because I keep going back to Jeremiah and all my stuff, Jeremiah just keeps popping up. So there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. God bless you.
God bless you.
Jeremiah is something that we consider ourselves. I consider myself as an investigator, also as a watchman too. And Jeremiah has got some great passages. One great passage about being a watchman and our duty as watchmen. So the caller that just called in and talking about this, that the family members turn their back on you, perhaps. Maybe you're listening. Maybe it's not the caller. Maybe it's you that are listening to this program. You've got family members that think you're absolutely wacko bonkers, and you should be in the. Remember the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? You should be in there with Jack Nicholson in that cage. But in the end, they're the very people who are going to come to you and say, explain to me what's going on now. I kind of missed the first go-around, so please explain what's going on. And some other things that caller said, too. We get the government that we work for, earn, and deserve. Just think about that. Back to the phones. Back to the phones we go. We're going to go to the 912 area code. 912, you're up with Doug Hagmann.
Hey, how you doing, Doug Hagmann?
Very well. What's on your mind tonight now?
Actually, I had two things that I wanted to talk about. One thing, I wanted to know, did you know that they found Nephilim Canaanite altars where they founded the Federal Reserve at in Jekyll Island? Did you hear about that?
You know what? I didn't. You're coming in a little bit garbled. They found some type of altars at Jekyll Island? Is that what you said?
They found the Nephilim Canaanite altars at the founding of the Federal Reserve.
Oh, I didn't know that. No. Where did you find this information out, or is there some place that we could get further information on it?
Yeah, it's on, let's see, it's called societieshistories.com, I believe.
Okay. All right.
If you just put satanic altars, Federal Reserve, it'll pop up. It's the first thing that pops up. But it's his pastor who actually went there, and it talks about his testimony, and the cottage that he went to, that the historian took him to, was actually where, they got it, cut it off right now where, Maine people can't go in there, but they show it off as this is where the banksters pretty much came up with their plan. That the particular cottage that it's on is actually a satanic altar. So then it makes it even deeper. You know what I'm saying? Because then that means the Federal Reserve was satanically planned, which is what, really it is anyway. But now it puts a satanic significance behind it, also with the, the financial, physical features and numbers that you can see. You know what I'm saying? So it's actually connecting two of them together. You know what I'm saying? It says one sacrificial altar was found on Jekyll Island below the cottage where the secret meeting by Wall Street bankers formed the Federal Reserve was held in 1910. This interview confirms that many people already know that the Federal Reserve, the global central banking cartel, is occult and satanic in nature.
Well, and that should surprise no one, because who are the bankers? Yeah. Where do they come from? You're talking about the Rothschild family, the Rockefeller family, and of course, you mix in there that whole inchoate almost system of satanic and Luciferian worship that this is built and founded upon, which is why we bring it up, because inherently what we're seeing, this is satanic and Luciferian in nature, and people, it's amazing how many pundits want to politicize an issue that's really an issue of evil, instead of blaming. So you're talking about pure, unadulterated evil, as opposed to just making this out of the political specter or political fight. So you're right, but I'm going to search for this. This, and we'll find out. We'll report back on it. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, and also the One World Trade Center that was built to replace the two Twin Towers, they kept the bones and everything, the remainings under the tower, right? Did you hear about that? Or is that missed?
Well, it depends on which story you want to believe. I've heard a couple of stories, in fact, I interviewed a construction worker, or a worker that was involved in both sides, taking the rubble away and also the construction of the Freedom Tower, or whatever you want to call it. So I've heard some things, but what have you heard, or what are you referring to?
What I'm saying is, if they did do that, then that would, and because of all that tarnish and hate that was actually put on 9/11, all of those souls that died that weren't supposed, God let it happen, so they were supposed to die, but the way that they died was terrible. That would harvest evil energy in that one particular spot. Now, leaving the bones there, this is, getting into satanic, things. They use the bones of the dead to harvest spirits of the undead, or, the demonic realm. Now, if they did indeed leave these bones here and then built this Freedom Tower, on top of it, it could actually be a satanic altar. Now, what makes this even interesting is that the glass that they decided to use has a triangle going up and a triangle going down. Now, if you put the triangle up and the triangle going down, you got the hexagram. Now, satanic, curses and things of that sort, that was one of the most powerful signs is a hexagram, to be able to put a hex on someone. So 9/11 is very significant in the spiritual realm. If this is all true, this is speculation. I'm just going off the spirit, I believe. But I think if all of this is true, then that is actually kind of like a portal of, hate and energy. Like the energy that's there is just like it's sealed in the ground from the dead people that are under it to the dead people that are controlling it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I just want to remind people who are listening to this and saying, boy, both these guys are loony bin material. It's not. There are things, like you mentioned, there are things that are for example, if you are a doubter, look at your coin in your pocket or the dollar bill, especially in your pocket, and put yourself ahead, light generations ahead in time. And if you would come back to the United States or whatever would be left of the United States and find a dollar bill, we'll say, and look around at the architecture of Washington, look around at the architecture that this caller is talking about, and knowing the history, you would legitimately ask, as a historian in the future, gee, I wonder what God the Americans were worshiping. Isn't that true, Paul?
Yeah, you're right.
Because in God we trust is on the coin, but which God is being worshipped, especially with all the signs, the way the Washington was built and such, and the Freedom Towers you mentioned, or if that's what you want to call it, or whatever. But I get your point. But it's things for people to look into, and not to be dismissed lightly, I might add. Very good, caller. God bless you, my friend.
God bless you, too.
All right, gonna cut you loose. Thanks, buddy.
All
right. But you know what? It's folks, don't dismiss things out of hand just because we may not understand them. We're gonna go to Piston Pilot. How did you do that, Piston Pilot? You're up with Doug Hagmann.
No, actually, I go by the name of One Angry Jew all over BTR. It's
okay.
The first time I've stumbled across. Which Hagmann are you, the elder or junior?
As much as I'd like to say I'm the junior because of age, I'm the senior. I'm the dad.
Senior. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about allowing knives, TSA. Have you brought that up yet?
Okay, you're breaking up on my end.
Oh, I am? It's probably not to your audience, though.
No, wait a second. I didn't hear what you were saying. You're breaking up. You go ahead and say what was on your mind.
Do you hear me now? I was saying Skype behaves badly. I should have just dialed the phone number, or it seems to work better. TSA
okay.
allowing...
I got you.
TSA now saying it's okay to bring knives on board the airplanes.
Okay.
Here, I'll read you. Well, this is from Bloomberg. I'll read you the second paragraph. The agency will permit knives with retractable blades shorter than 6 centimeters, 2.36 inches, and narrower than 1/2 inch. TSA Administrator John Pistole said today at an aviation security conference in Brooklyn. I am flummoxed by this. I don't even know how to, because it from so many angles. Look, I have studied 9/11 up and down. I'm also a pilot, so I can come at 9/11 from an aeronautical perspective, and I can tell you in many ways how it's impossible to do what they say was done. But I'm flummoxed by this. If we're told that 19 hijackers with razor blades, which I think are less than 2.3 inches long, and certainly not 1/2 inch in width, if razor blades are what we were told brought down 4 airliners or made it possible to take over for airliners, then how could it possibly say now we're going to let you take knives on there, but we're still going to stick our hands in your pants? I'm baffled by this.
As well you should be. As well we all should be. It just shows that this is not about security. It's about conditioning. The TSA, the DHS has always been about conditioning and control. It's not about security. You're right. They can, effective April 25th of this year, you're exactly correct. Bloomberg is reporting this, as well as all other news agencies, that, yes, go ahead, bring your knives, bring your hockey
bring your baseball bats.
Sticks.
Bring your baseball bats.
Yeah.
Bring an entire team with a baseball. Look, as a pilot, I can tell you what other pilots have said about 9/11. Some of them buy the lies, but pilots who think about it for a couple of seconds will tell you that, and if you think about this as well, it makes perfect sense. How would you take down a hijacker with, say, a baseball bat or a knife, and you're the pilot? And here's the scenario: you're inside the cockpit. You are strapped in with a 3-point harness, and you're in your seat you're very well in your seat. You're not coming out. Most pilots will tell you that they will beat the hijacker to death with the airplane. And what that means is all you got to do is turn the airplane upside down. Now you got hijacker just hit his head on the floor. Turn it around and you just smack him into the wall. Now you got a lot of other people are going to get hurt too, those who are not wearing a seatbelt in their seats. But if you think about it, you could just beat the crap out of anybody or several people who are standing there saying, hey, we got box cutters, give us your airplane. Oh, okay. Grab the yoke and turn it in any direction. They're going to go flying. So I always laugh when I look at the cockpit doors now, because it's such a joke and they make such a big deal when you get up to go to the bathroom. Oh, you can't go to the front bathroom because the pilot is using that, or because we're going to open the cockpit door or something like that. Now everybody's going to have knives, less than 2.36 inches. I got to see if my spider coat fits that bill. And retractable. I don't even know what retractable means. Does that mean it's a switchblade? Does that mean it's like a dagger where the blade retracts into a handle and then sticks out? The definition, the descriptions that they're using just baffle me. But what baffles me more is have we forgotten about 9/11? All the lies that we've been told over the years, and all the things that we've been told that we have to do now to fly, and all of a sudden now it's okay. And I assume that swarthy-looking men with beards and flowing robes will have no trouble getting their 2.36-inch knives aboard an aircraft.
It makes no sense.
But they won't be able. Right. But they won't be able to have 3 ounces of liquid, I would imagine. I imagine that 3 ounces of orange or 4 ounces of orange juice will get you ejected, and they'll have to throw that away. But your knife is okay, or your baseball bat.
Well, none of this makes sense, caller. I mean, I think we can agree with that. None of this makes sense. What's the larger picture here? I think as we see things unfold with this new regulation allowing knives, hockey sticks, and yes, baseball bats and golf clubs into the cabin of the aircraft, where are we going with this? What's the deal here?
I really don't know. What we're told is that they're trying to harmonize, and you've heard that word before if you've delved into any of the legal aspects of international law, where we always love to harmonize our laws with other countries, and that is what supposedly this is about. That other countries, all of the ICA, which I believe is the international, I forget the acronym, but the International Flight Standards, just like our FAA, the ICA apparently has no problem with people with knives. I guess they never did.
Exactly.
So we're now harmonizing with the rest of the world that says, well, we don't have a problem with people with knives getting on there. Sometimes they like to cut their oranges. Look, I used to laugh when I used to go through Chicago O'Hare or some of the airports in years ago after 9/11 when they would tell me that I couldn't have a knife, and I was in the sterile area ordering a steak and watching people try to cut their steak with plastic knives. because they couldn't give them a regular metal knife because they might take that onto the plane. Of course, you could still drink your Snapple out of a glass bottle, which you could easily break, and I never saw anybody told me that I couldn't take a bottle of Snapple on board. And if I really wanted something, I could break a mirror in one of the bathrooms and get a large shard of glass. I think that'd be much more scary than a box cutter or anything like that. I don't know where this is going. I'm just baffled by the blatant hypocrisy now that they're going to say all of a sudden now 10, 12 years later it's okay to carry knives again because a box cutter would fit. It's got to retract. In fact, guess what? Their description of a retractable blade shorter than 6 centimeters is a box cutter. Is it not?
It's a box cutter or a pocket knife. Yes.
Well, forget about the pocket knife. It's a box cutter. A box cutter retracts into its protective sleeve so that when you carry it in your pocket, you don't stick yourself with the razor blade. So they have just described box cutters as being okay.
No, I mean, look, I agree with you. But I think what we're seeing, and you mentioned the word harmonizing, there's this, and I agree with you, there's this integration or this need for global standards, integration with other countries to level things out, level the security out. There's this push for this globalization. I think this is where this is headed. But again, these are all stepping stones, in my view. These are all stepping stones to the globalization, to this one world, whatever you want to call it, globalization of everything. And so yes, I think you're absolutely correct when you mention the word harmonization.
Well, that's their word. That's not my word. That's their word. I'm very familiar with that word, but that's their reason for doing this. And the flight attendants are now up in arms because they're saying, wait a second, okay, they can't get in the cockpit door because we've got that all fortified now, and you'd need a cannon to get in there. But what about us? And that was the whole reason. Wasn't that the whole reason that they told us that these 19 Arabs and 1 Egyptian took over the airplanes? They threatened the flight crew and made the pilots open the door.
Yes.
So it's almost like they're sticking it in my eye. It's almost like they're laughing at me.
Do you fly the big ones? The heavies?
No.
Okay. All right.
No. You always as a pilot fantasize that one day you'll be needed like one of the airport movies, and I think I would be much better suited than people who aren't pilots to fly one of those things, but I probably would be able to get it down to the ground, but I can tell you right now it won't be pretty.
Well, well, I don't want to be a passenger. I was on Coast to Coast AM with I'm trying to think of his name, Mike. He was a pilot of 747, one of the heavy planes, and we were talking about the TSA and about their all the TSA is right now. It's about obedience training. They're looking at us like dogs, and the TSA is the dog trainer for the American public. So
I look at them like dogs, but I'm looking at this entire thing now. So they're going to allow knives and baseball bats, but what aren't they going to allow? Am I still going to be told that I can't bring a large tube of toothpaste?
Sure, of course. Certain things are going to be off limits, and again, it's not going to have any particular obvious rhyme or reason to it. And once again, when you look at it, step back and stop trying to figure it out, because doggone it, caller, you're being too doggone rational.
Well, help me out here, because I've got a question. Help me out with this, because my memory sort of fails me. Prior to 9/11, we were able to bring knives on board, correct?
I never tried it. I think that the carry-on luggage, I think I think, oh goodness, I don't think there were any standards except for obvious offensive weapons. I don't think there were any security standards immediately prior to 9/11. I could be wrong, but the box cutters, by the way, made their way in, it's my understanding, well before the passengers did. I mean, or the hijackers did. It wasn't the hijackers that they weren't on their person. They were already in place in the planes. from the food service or the support services for the
well, if you've
aircraft.
ever seen the knives that are in first class, I've always said that if you want to have a knife on board, just fly first class because they give you really nice silverware, nice sharp metal knives. They don't give you the crap that they give you back in coach. But the people of 9/11, just if you take the Muhammad Atta for example. Did he carry his box cutter? They set off the alarms in both airports that they went through because Muhammad Atta started in Maine. He didn't fly out of Boston, which always baffled me because if you were going to be the mastermind and you were going to hijack an airplane, you would think that you wouldn't sleep in Maine, but you would sleep in the city that you're going to hijack the plane in. That just seems like common sense to me. But that didn't. I certainly would not leave anything to chance. Well, the picture, I don't know if you, I'm assuming that you know this, but the picture of Muhammad Atta that they like to show going through airport security wearing a nice pair of khaki jeans and a button-down shirt, no tie, was a picture taken from Maine where he slept the night before. Because he took a commuter flight from Maine to Boston. Because we all know in America that commuter flights are never late and never canceled and always on time, and with 40 minutes to spare somehow made it through two wands, and he was wanded both times. I think a lot of these guys were, supposedly. I think these guys were patsies. I don't think they had anything to do with it. I didn't think they knew that they were going to die that day.
I got to tell you, I agree with you, my friend. I agree with you, my friend. I got to cut you loose. We got some other calls to get to. Closing comments?
Just that anybody who discusses this really shouldn't talk about retractable blades, but should say box cutters, because that's what's described. A retractable blade shorter than 6 centimeters. That's a box cutter. So everybody should get their box cutters. And now on this TSA no-fly day, where people used to say, okay, we're going to opt out. My son and I are going to travel to Florida in a couple of weeks, and we're going to opt out. I'm not going through the backscatter things, and I'm not putting him through it either. But I think that now, if people are going to fly after April, whatever the date is, they should start carrying box cutters. Everybody. What are they going to do? Imagine if everybody had a box cutter. It'd be like the old Archie Bunker thing where he said you hand out a gun at the beginning of the flight, and then you pick it up as people are exiting the aircraft. Problem solved.
Exactly. All right, my friend. God bless. Definitely call again. Enjoyed the call. Oh man, yeah, it's nuts. I think, in fact, we should have. If you're going to fly, and after April 25th, hey, you got a box cutter, stick it in your pocket. How much sense does this make? You see, it's insanity. It is one flew over the cuckoo's nest, but it's controlled insanity. It's people that are taking us, that have sold us down the path. They have taken away our freedoms. It's the conditioning which we are now faced with and left with. That caller was absolutely right, and it's something that we have to confront. When somebody says to you that or somebody sticks up for the TSA or DHS, all you have to do is show them the report from Bloomberg or the L.A.Times about this law change or about this rule change, and ask them how much sense does this make. Don't forget, folks, they're going to be administering your health care. Think about that. We're going to go back to the phones at 205. 205, you're up with Doug Hagmann.
Hey, Mr. Doug, good evening. How are you, sir?
Very well, sir.
Hey,
good to
Ken
hear your voice. Ken, we got about 5 minutes left of the program.
Okay.
You got it. What's going on?
I'll try to be real quick, so fasten your seatbelt. Have you ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Mr. Field McConnell?
Not offhand, no.
Okay, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Field McConnell, who he and another gentleman run the website Able, that's ABEL, AbleDanger.net. Mr. McConnell is a former airline pilot, and he's put an awful lot of thought and research into the 9/11 thing. And as I remember from hearing him speak a few months ago, he found out, I think he was involved in a lawsuit against the Boeing Corporation, and found out that Boeing has the electronics and the technology to totally, completely fly an airplane remotely, to take total, complete control of it and land it if necessary. That was developed ostensibly to prevent plane hijacking, so that if a hijacking did occur, they could take control of an airplane and land it wherever they wanted to land it, and the pilot would have to say, I have no complete control, I have no control of the airplane, they have taken control of it from the ground. Well, what if, I'm just asking, what if those planes that flew into the tower weren't under the control of anybody? Maybe they were being flown remotely. Think about it.
First of all, let me apologize because I am ashamed, actually. I should know the name Field McConnell. Able Danger, indeed. It just didn't click with me. I've seen his picture. You're right. Okay. Now, Field McConnell is he's no slouch. He's oh goodness, he was in the Marines. He was an aircraft. He's retired from the Air National Guard. He's got the bona fides to talk and to bring to the table these claims. So, and he was. In fact, it's my belief he was, in fact, one of the administrators of the Able Danger program. So you're right. But yes, okay. So are we talking about this maybe being present on 9/11? Is that what you're saying?
That's what my understanding is. That is his position. That's probably what happened. So it's something to think about anyway. I just wondered if you knew him and if you'd ever met him, and maybe perhaps you might have him on the program sometime and interview him.
You know what? I'm aware of him now. It's so many people, so many different, so much information out there. It's information overload, and I apologize. I'm certainly aware of the Able Danger program, and now that I just looked him up here and I see Field McConnell, and Field, like the field, is his first name, and then McConnell, McConnell.
Right.
Okay, just for people who want to search his name, abledanger.net, United States Marine. So yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to reach out to him. I'll talk to him off air and see what he's got to say, and then possibly have him on as a guest.
I hope you'll strongly consider having him, because I think he's got some information that we need to at least hear anyway. And by the way, thanks so much for having Dr. Judy Wood on. I watched that entire presentation, particularly the video that you were able to do remotely there with the Ustream. That worked almost perfectly, and as the saying goes, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It was really great. My question to you, and by the way, I'm going to buy the book, but is there a DVD, I wonder, of that presentation available? If not, there sure does need to be one made available.
Well, you know, with Pete Santilli's and Dr. Judy Wood's permission, we're gonna make a video presentation on that. It's a tedious and time-consuming ordeal to do that, and then we're gonna see if we can't just make it available either via DVD or through
maybe somebody else, or some small video production company could help her or something anyway. Okay, well, listen, I'll get off here. Thank you so much, Doug. Appreciate it. Take care. Good night.
All right, Ken. God bless, man. Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, folks, I'll tell you what. You just made it through a program. 3 hours, solo, Doug Hagmann, for better or for worse. It's up to you. I just want to say thank you very much for listening. I want to say, there's just no way I could sit here and thank every letter I've gotten, that we've gotten, Joe and I've gotten over the past several months about this program. I want to thank everyone who sent a letter, sent an email. We've read them all. We think so highly of everyone, and we appreciate you as listeners. We appreciate those listening in various foreign countries over in Europe, Australia, and other places. God bless each and every one of you. Tomorrow we're going to be back full staffed with Joe and also L.A. Marzulli for a show you don't want to miss. God bless you. Until tomorrow, good night.